Halo Episode 4 review I've reviewed, the others down in the description below. Now, my favourite thing about the last episode is how it proved that Master Chief no longer needs his armours. That's for all those other inferior Spartans. Master Chief only needs to do the windmill at the enemies and knock laser blasts aside with his own genitalia. Yes, everyone else needs weapons and firearms, but Master Chief, he only needs his manhood. You don't get more alpha than that. Honestly, at this point, I just want some kind of t-shirt merch. It's like what I really wanted for Christmas was a video game adaptation, and all I got was these saggy cheeks. And so in episode 2 and 3, what we got was a pair of saggy cheeks. And then in this episode, we've got 2, because this show likes to take what they did in previous episodes and double down on it to make it bigger and better. But because the entire episode is trash, what they end up with is something that gets exponentially worse, and honestly at this point I'm quite impressed by it. But we start with Halsey training the children, and let's be honest, what's the point of having kids if you can't put them to work? And then we get John in the cell, and I think everyone's been calling him Master Cheeks recently the last week, but let's be honest, it's kind of a bit overly complimentary for him really. If anything, it's saggy cheeks, and it's just the problem is then I lose the pun, and I unfortunately can't think of a better one right now. But Halsey walks in, and this is a very weird scene because it keeps hiding her face, and we very quickly realize why. Still hiding a face. Sits down, still hiding a face. That's why we're hiding a face. This scene's meant to be 25 years ago. Are we going to use advanced CGI de-aging techniques? No, we're just going to put makeup on with a trowel. There's this very weird uncanny valley effect going on, and I think it's literally because at this point we're essentially looking at a painting and not a human face. I've just watched this scene, can't even remember what was said because it was so boring. It was basically, I want to go home, you can't go home, you're special. Welcome to Master Chief and his one expression. After the last episode, I looked up this guy's previous history, and he was in American Gods, and he was a good actor in it. So why he's phoning in this with one expression, I actually have no idea. I can only assume it's some kind of director instruction. Just look as if you're constipated the entire series, please. I don't know. Speaking of constipated, thumbnail number 1. So we've got Halsey and the creepy scientist, who I'm pretty sure has a whole array of Halsey Flash clones just tied up around his house, and they're discussing the magic triangle. It's magic, folks! They even call it the Mandrigal object instead of the magical one. They basically say, it's amazing, it can do anything, it's almost like it knows what the plot needs. She literally describes a MacGuffin in the story, and then goes, it must have intelligence. And I mean, I hope it does, because none of the writers do. They just describe it being magic, essentially. We're 4 minutes into the show, I'm already annoyed. But they ask what's special about Master Chief, why is it only reacting to him? And Halsey goes, I've been asking myself that question since I first met him. Doesn't explain why. But Master Chief's too busy admiring the beauty out the window now. This is a man who can take on an entire space station of the Covenant alone with his dong. But apparently, space just makes him go teary. Cortana's like, you can't even see slip space. He's like, you're ruining it. Because even though we've got Kwan and finally evicted her from the spaceship, apparently we've got to now quote her, because what she said was so intellectually deep, I don't know how we could possibly do without it. And Cortana's like, oh, your blood pressure and heart rate are going up. I'm like, yes, he's just mentioned Kwan. Maybe he's incredibly annoyed because that's the effect it has on me. But apparently, no, he's anxious. Yes. One of the best trained, most advanced military operatives in the universe is anxious because he's going home. Oh, I hit you right in the feels. But it goes, is this what anxious feels like? And she goes, technically, so you mean yes? I mean, she says it's as if it's not true, but she's the one who diagnosed him. And I say diagnosed him because with acting skills like that, it's not as if you can read it off his face. And that was the intro. If I'm trying to find something good about the episode, at least that was something to do with the story, which is more than I can say for the previous 2 episodes. Kwan's back, and I'm already annoyed. So Kwan, the ignorant child who's done nothing but get her entire friends and family killed, starts advising this guy about how to avoid detection from censorships. And he's like, look, dear, I know how to avoid detection. Trust me. She's like, yeah, trust me. Yes, trust him. The experienced pirate, compared to the child who's failed at everything in the entire show. But in a feat of incredible scriptwriting, he starts telling her how he's going to charge her extra for breakfast. He goes, I'll pay extra if you stop talking. Oh, I'll pay extra if you stop existing. And just look at the smug look on her face. At no point has she ever cared that her entire family and friends have been murdered. And he's just like, somebody needs some more sleep. No, she needs to be fired out of an airlock. Now he starts talking about the effects of removing the pallet out of his back. I just go, oh, my memories came back bit by bit. It took a year for one and then a year for another one. I'm like, that's weird, because Master Chief lasted about 3 seconds before he started fawning over people playing the cello, and in this episode, he's going to remember basically everything about his entire life. So, you know, multiple years, multiple minutes, it's all the same thing, really. I'm just glad we've really nailed down those timescales for a consistent universe with rules. You know, like the rules we got for the magic triangle. Why couldn't it do this when before it did this? And the answer becomes back, because it wanted to. That entire scene was, memories make us who we are. Seriously, these scriptwriters are the people that read a bumper sticker and think it's deep. Anyway, this is the Peeping Tom Spartan. She saw Master Chief's removing his palette and for some reason decided to do it herself. As far as I can tell, nothing prompted this. She literally just removed it because he did. It's not like she knew any benefits of it or anything. There was no conversations about it, she just decided to do it. And for some reason decided to do it stark bollock naked in front of the mirror, just like he did. Just to remove something out of her lower back. And then we had another soldier walk in. What, to make it awkward? I don't know why. She's washing her knife in front of the other soldier in a bathroom while she stalkers, and for some reason the soldier doesn't think this is weird. She's just asking her, are you okay? Are you okay? She's got a big hole in her back. It's very obvious that she's just sliced open her back. And for some reason, she can't see it even though she's behind her. Bear in mind that it is a major deal if these people don't have their palettes in them, because 3 seconds later she'll be down on an oboe contest or something. She'll be taking up the violin. For some reason, the soldier didn't care about the big gaping wound in her back. And then we get another pair of master cheeks, because why not? I don't know. We're not going to put any shooting in our TV show about an FPS, so instead we're just going to add cheeks in and pretend that's entertainment instead. And then she throws her palette, which she must have in her at all times under UNSC rules, just in the sink for anyone to find. I was more discreet than that when I was 5 years old. You know, you steal chocolates out the drawer, I can at least hide the wrappers. But Master Chief lands at his parents' old colony. And for once, actually puts his helmet on when he's going into a possibly dangerous situation. It's amazing. Although we very quickly find out why. It's because he's driving. No, seriously. I mean, it's because he's driving. Because he takes it off the moment the car stops. No, seriously. The Halo TV show has just reduced Master Chief's helmet to bicycle headgear. He's going into an entirely unknown area. Could have alien technology in, the Covenant could be it, anything. But that helmet, he only wears it when he might crash his car. But Halsey calls his parents heroes. Oh, they did this, they were terraforming this area. It's like, yeah, until you killed them all. I don't know she's killed them all, but let's face it, it'd probably be cliche enough for the writers to put in. We get the first of many dream sequences that we've already seen from previous episodes. Again. Why? Because they're cheap, that's why. It literally works out where the thing they're looking for is buried by remembering it. The plot of this episode is very complex, I hope you can keep up. This guy is either very concerned that Master Chief's about to discover something he shouldn't, or is working out how he can fit another 100 Halsey clones into his basement. Kwan is already complaining. Oh, you couldn't have put us a bit closer, could you? Oh, I'm sorry, your feet gonna drop off if you have to walk more than 10 feet. You entitled little brat. And he's like, well, you may be paying the bills, but we're gonna do this my way. She hasn't paid for anything! She just gets given everything for free for no reason, when the only thing she deserves is the Will Smith treatment. But he says I've made a promise to John and we're going to keep her safe, even though last episode he literally said, either you pay me or I'll hand you in for your bounty. So he had no qualms about going against John before, but now suddenly he cares about John again. Even the scriptwriters find it difficult to concentrate on their own plot. The villains dressed all in black and trench coats and gloves, even though we're in the middle of a hot desert. I don't know if you're getting this subtle analogy that we're trying to conjure up in your mind here. Seriously, the only surprise is he's got a British accent rather than a German one. So they get in a car, which I'm pretty sure they just painted Go Faster stripes on and added a few bits over the windows, such as this, to try and make it look futuristic. At least I think they think it looks futuristic. I don't know what's going on. Like, the only futuristic thing about this entire scene is that car in front of him because it looks like it's hovering. And that's not done deliberately because we've just seen the wheels before this. It's just an accidental camera trick that hadn't been pulled off in this screenshot. But the Spartan takes Kwan to what is essentially a marketplace. And despite the fact she's got a huge bounty on her, she has cleverly made sure that she can't be noticed by any of the many hundreds of people around her, because she's cunningly disguised herself by pulling her hood up. Sure, that'll work. Yeah, she's a complete ninja. And when I say complete ninja, she sees this market trader and immediately pulls her hood down. This is an incredibly busy marketplace. And she just keeps telling how she wants to lead the militia, and he's like, you've got a bounty on your head, I can't talk to you. But once again, she doesn't care about the effects of anyone else but herself. And she's like, I'm here to help, but you're here to get him killed. But he tells her to come to a memorial tonight for her father. I'm like, she's been gone for weeks. What have you been doing all of this time? It's a freaking desert eel. I've definitely started to smell by now. But the guy's petrified because there's a criminal in front of him with a hood off, so he runs off. And she starts chasing him, screaming his name, with her hood down through all of the people. And there's a bounty for her on the wall. You couldn't make this crap up. And she's still just standing there with her hood down. It's... oh... absolutely no one has noticed her, running around, screaming, pushing her way through the crowd, even though there's a big wanted poster right next to her face. So now we get a scene that I've already watched twice, and I still don't understand it. Because she's removed her emotional suppressant palette, and now she's cleaning her guns. And she squirts, like, I don't know, gun cleaning fluid onto a rag? Lubricant? I don't know. Gun oil? I'm not a gun owner, I'm British. But it's like this red gunk. Why would you dye gun oil red for a start? In the military, I can't imagine many of the soldiers are like, oh, I just want my gun to be nice and red and shiny. And then she starts putting it in her hair. I've just removed this emotional suppressant out of my back, and now I'm going to make it obvious by dyeing my hair. Which I'm sure is against regulations for a start. And it's not hair dye, it's gun oil. Even if it wasn't a sign that you've removed the pellet out of your back, any decent commander will be like, what is that gunk in your hair for? Go and shower, you dirty cow. Then she's admiring it like, oh, I've got dirty hair. No accounting for taste. Anyway, woman in STEM wants to test other Spartans on Magic Triangle. She's meant to be really smart, but as far as I can tell, her logic is Master Chief Spartan touch thing worked, other Spartans touch thing might work. And she's like, I need to test you so I can determine what, if anything, makes John so special. Like, well, shouldn't you be testing John then? I need to determine what makes KFC so finger-licking good. And so for that reason, I'm going to study salads. I'm not sponsored by KFC, I just think their herbs and spices being a secret are about as BS as this show. You're not even talking about the show. No, nobody should be, let's be honest. She goes, you touch the magic triangle, I'll be behind the safety glass. If someone says that to me, I'll be like, no thanks, I want to be behind the safety glass as well. If you need to be behind safety glass, I'm not being in the room. She asks him to take his helmet off, and we get a cut before we actually see him take it off. Because that guy's more Master Chief than Master Chief, who's not even carrying his helmet with him because he's left it on a log somewhere. He has no idea that this area is safe and isn't even wearing his helmet. Also, for a guy in a mechanical suit which gives him super strength, he is terrible at digging holes. He can barely lift up the clearly already pre-dug soil. Even for a normal man, that actor is crap at digging holes. And he's like, oh, I found this. I'm like, oh, that was really lucky. They only buried it 2 inches underneath the soil. And in the 30 years since, it didn't get any deeper. So they get out the white box and can't wait to see what mystical artifacts they've discovered, which was definitely worth burying. It's some kids pissing drawings. That's not worth traveling to the end of your garden for, let alone across space. She's meant to be really smart. I bet she feels like an idiot now. I do for watching the show. But we get pictures of the magic triangle, the thing that goes around the magic triangle, which just coincidentally looks like the computer CGI drawing they made from their lab last episode, of which they did a perfect rendering even though they'd never seen it. And the only description they got was, it fits around it. And oh look, he drew a circle. It's a halo, everyone, it's Halo. And he goes, I don't recognize this one. I'm like, yeah, that's Halo. No one recognizes this show, is it either? And Halsey's like, John, is there anything here that can tell us where the larger object is? I'm like, I don't know. Do you think the 5-year-old squiggles of a circle could possibly tell you where everything else was? She's like, I think we should head back to the ship to analyze these drawings. You've barely looked around the area, you've discovered some 5-year-old squiggles on a page, and for some reason that's enough and you want to pack up home? I mean, seriously, I know a proud parent likes to stick their child's drawings up on the fridge, but I think you're taking it a bit too far. Creepy scientist really looks like he's resisting the urge to just grab her ass. Making fists to resist the urge. Yeah, dude can wait till he gets home, where he's got 250 of them tied to a radiator. Some tied to the sink, others in maid's outfits going around his house doing the dusting. It's just him and 500 Halseys. That's a show I'd watch. So there's a load of people at a ceremony with a bell and singing and candlelight, all in remembrance of Kwan's father. And she walks up and goes, this is all he gets after all he's done for these people? You selfish, inconsiderate little cow! He was a rebel leader. The planet's now been taken over by a guy who just lines people up and shoots them in the face. These people are probably risking their life to even mourn him in the first place. And she's like, oh, it's not enough for me. You didn't even have anything to do with it, you pissed off. She might be the most horrible character of any TV show, and I'm including the Wheel of Time in this. And they had some right bints. I mean, they were arrogant, entitled Mary Sues. But even they didn't piss on their own father's funeral. But despite how incredibly insufferable Kwan is, she walks up to this woman and she's like, "Oh, it's you!" The most unbelievable part of the show to me is that anyone can physically stand Kwan out of the entire universe. And she's like, "Oh, Kwan, I thought we'd lost you too." Yeah, we can live in hope. But Kwan's like, "Tell me the plan. We must have some kind of resistance." She's like, "No, there's no resistance." She's like, "The guy took over has been shooting people in the face. All the people want is protection at this point. They're scared." And through gritted teeth, she's like, "We can't give up. We need to fight." It's like, you've done nothing. You're pissed off at the first sign of trouble with a random guy you just met. After getting all of your friends and your father killed. I notice you suddenly care about him now, even though you left him under a car, crushed, with the Covenant all around him, and you didn't even go and try and pull him out from underneath the car. She's the reason her father's dead, but for some reason, the moment he's dead, she just wants to take over his entire empire, which I know was never mentioned until the last episode. In that first episode, we just knew he was leading that little outpost, not the planet. But the guy's like, "Okay, the rebellion's over, we need to leave," and he's dragging her off, and she's like, No, I need to give her a piece of my mind." And through gritted teeth, once again, she starts accusing her of selling out to the enemy now for some reason. She's like, "You should have taken over his empire. You left at the first sign of trouble, and then you come back and just start telling everybody else that they've not done enough for you." And starts calling her a traitor. What an absolutely abysmal, horrible person the little brat is. Then she starts accusing the entire funeral of being traitors. Cares so much about making a scene that she'll disrupt her own father's funeral just for her own selfish personal gain. Filth. And I said these people were probably risking their lives to even have a funeral for someone that was leading a rebellion in the first place. Well, guess where those cars were going, because they've turned up and they're pointing guns at them. I can't imagine risking my life to pay respects to someone's father, and they turn up and just start acting like a little bint. Someone needs to go and fetch your fridge, stat. But for some reason, these people have brought sticks and just start hitting people at random. None of this makes any sense. I don't know what they're trying to achieve. Woman in STEM asks Spartan to put his hand on the device, so he just puts it on and she's like, "Slowly, please." Not sure why the speed matters. The device doesn't care whether you grab it or caress it. I know you've claimed it's intelligent, but still.
"I only activate if you rub me the right way. You really know how to push my buttons."
But then we get back to the emotional wench, and now she's revealed her dyed hair. And then she's just like, "Okay. What?" She's like, "Is there anything wrong?" I mean, "I don't know." And she's like, "Well, your hair. Did you do that to yourself?" Like, who else is going to do it? She didn't pop down the barber's and he said, "Oh yeah, I'll just put some of this gun oil gunk in your hair." But then randomly she says, "You don't like us, do you, Spartans?" And launches into a big monologue about how she knows all these different languages. And you're just like, why? Why is it in this scene? And the answer is obviously because it's important in the plot later. It doesn't make any sense in this scene. At no point was it prompted in conversation. It just had to be said to set up a later scene. For no reason. This is the story equivalent of a red shirt. And she just reaches over and grabs it, and the woman's like, "Wait!" because she's not behind a protective little screen, which honestly is probably the first thing the little peeping Tom's done that I actually liked. It's like, yeah, you want me to touch that thing, you're gonna be in here with me. But Master Chief and the scientists are in his home, and for some reason, a tree has grown through it. It's only been like 30 years. This house has been here for more than 30 years. No tree has grown through this. I mean, look at it! How did that get there in 30 years? I'm not having to constantly hack away at the floor to keep the trees at bay or something. But Master Chief asks Cortana if she can dig into his memories and then reconstruct that in his helmet so that he can see the house through his visor. He's getting used to Cortana and how useful she is. It's really subtle. I mean, last episode she was just helping him to Google, but this time, now apparently she can reconstruct entire memories. But he says, "Can you show me what the house used to look like?" And she says something like, "If I have enough visual data, I can interpolate and recreate an approximate facsimile of what it may have looked like in the past." She means yes. And if you're a writer, that does make you sound smart. It makes you sound like you've got a word count that you need to hit. But Halsey's already scared and setting him up and going, "Oh, there could be scary images from your past." Basically telling him, if you see anything about me, don't believe it. But with that, despite being in the potentially dangerous environment all this time, now he puts his helmet on. So as the show has taught us, his helmet is there simply in case he crashes his car, or if he needs to see his own memories, which are in his own head. He's the only human being to have ever lived that needs a heads-up display to remember things. Creepy scientist is still checking out Halsey. I mean, she's right there. She's like, "I'm gonna put 3 of you in a blender and feed you to each other. I'm gonna get 3 of you to Eiffel Tower yourself." Notice the tree vanished. So it's not like they built the house around the tree. That tree grew through that building in 30 years. And that's assuming he's like 37 or something. I don't know how old he is. So Cortana has basically recreated magic by stitching together his memories into an image. And the only thing Master Chief has to say is, no, that table was over there. I mean, come on, dude. Does it matter where the table is in this image? No. God forbid someone puts a piece of IKEA furniture in the wrong place in your memory. I mean, she recreated it from his memories. How on earth are they wrong? And if she did recreate them from his memories, how does he remember it differently than she's built it? Look at the pissing tree! So he's wandering around looking at all the images, including where his drawings were. No, this is literally the plot. It goes on for ages. This is the plot of the episode.
Oh, this is where my 5-year-old self hung his drawings.
Didn't even put him on a fridge. This guy's the most expensive suit of armor in the universe, and he's using it to look at memories from his own head. I just closed my eyes. Even that's not required. But Master Chief wants to go to the back room. Halsey panics because she knows what happened in the back room. But luckily, all that back room is corrupted. There's no data, and Cortana can't access it. It's almost like Halsey's removed the memory herself. It's really subtle. But then he sees himself run around with a dog. And the plot for the next 3 minutes is basically he was a kid with a dog. Now, they do have this cool technology where essentially he can wave a magic wand over some plants and they grow. And I'm like, well, okay, if you've got that technology, why is Kwan's home planet a desert? Why can't everybody do that with a magic wand? Like, is this technology everyone has access to? Or is that just like Penn and Teller's grandson or something? And he's just wandering around looking at images of himself as a kid. It's really boring. And it's all done in the heavily bokeh, blurred background memory style because it's really cheap to do. And it goes on forever. Oh, look, there's a dog. There's a shiny helmet. He's almost got an expression there. Almost. And he's just walking around and now he's looking at himself draw on the floor. And there's this big, really expressive music as if this is a major deal that's happening. And the music's doing all of the work because nothing is happening on the screen at all. It's just a compilation of random images with nothing happening. There's some solar panels, which, if they're anything like ours, that'll probably be about enough to charge your phone. And Master Chief's watching him draw, and then he literally asks himself in his own memory if he can see the drawing. I'm like, you could just move him. Despite the fact that he can clearly see over his shoulder anyway. But he draws a circle, and quite honestly, I can barely handle the tension. Oh look, he's drawn it more times, that must mean something. As a boy, he goes down the hole. I don't know why the parents haven't found this, to be honest. I mean, it seems to be a big hole right next to the solar panels, and nobody noticed it. But we found out it's one of the Forerunner caverns, just like was on whatever the desert planet was I can't even be bothered to look up the name of. I keep thinking of Margaret, but that's an Elden Ring boss. Madrigal, that's the one. I was more excited I remembered that name than anything that's happened in this show so far. But the kid walks through the cavern, finds a central pillar, and just goes to touch it, as you do. And Master Chief's doing it. So now Master Chief is the little kid wandering around, even though he was also just behind himself, asking him if he could see his drawing before. I don't know when he flipped. And for some reason, he's only decided to act out touching the pillar, not walking up to it or anything else, because he's still in the I'm gonna look over your shoulder position. His hallucinations are really weird and random, and for some reason seem to jump around like they do in the show. Halsey's like, what on earth is going on here? Cortana, are you doing this? And Cortana's like, no, I stopped projecting this a long time ago. Like, I don't know why you didn't tell anyone that. It's kind of important when your killing machine is hallucinating. But the kid touches the pillar and it lights up like the magic triangle. And we get loads of flashes of memories, including Master Chief wincing, and it's meant to be really big and impressive when really the only thing I can think right now is, if I bite my own foot, will it make me feel something again? Oh look, we've got to see Master Chief outside his suit. Again. Psych, he's back in it. I'm fed up with this show. There we see him and Halsey in his own memories, which we didn't see before. And as you can tell, we don't see Halsey's face, because if we have to apply that much makeup to her all over again, we may actually run out of all supplies on planet Earth. But John has finally realized there's something weird going on here. Why on earth was Halsey around me as a child? And of course, the moment you realize there's a traitor you missed and she might actually be betraying you in some way, you should immediately take your helmet off! Not as if she's a threat or anything. You can tell he's angry because he looks constipated again and is panting heavily. Either that or he's just defecated in his suit. The best bit is he doesn't even confront her or talk to her, he just walks off like a little child. Not one of the most deadly men in the universe. So Woman in STEM has made them touch the magic triangle and then has come up with the revolutionary idea that I could never have come up with in a million years, that there must be something special about Master Chief, and it might be in his DNA. I mean, careful, love, with science like that, I'm not sure I can keep up. And we get this scene where she grabs the needler, which I'm pretty sure is just them trying to desperately get some game fans on side. But the thing is, the woman in STEM is panicking when the soldier picks up a gun, which they clearly know. Her sole purpose in life is using firearms, and she's panicking. Oh no, what if she does something incorrect with this firearm that she clearly knows and has used in battle before? She's even describing the exact use and how it all goes together and everything, which is far more than the woman in STEM knows about it. And yet for some reason, she's constantly panicking. She might be thicker than Kwan, I'm not sure, although not as annoying. But she finds out that the soldiers actually know what the Covenant call the gun. Or at least they think that, because she says that's what they say when we turn it on them. Which doesn't make any sense. But at least they do go, although it could not be the name of the gun, it could just mean, please don't kill me. Which makes more sense than thinking it's the name of the gun. If someone pointed a gun at me, I wouldn't go, oh, Glock 47! But the thing is, they have to know what it stands for, and it has to be correct. Otherwise, this woman's entire plan is wrong. And yes, her entire plan is wrong, although the show is going to pretend it works. Because she starts recording the language as she realizes that they know some of their words, and she's going to use that to try and crack whatever they mentioned in the previous episodes about their language. The issue is, none of this works because she's writing it down as if they're saying Needler. When, as I've already said, if someone points a gun at you, they're not going to go, Glock 47! So essentially, the only thing that we know they're not saying is Needler. Which then means she couldn't use it to decode anything because she's already got it wrong. And she's so happy with herself. Oh, aren't I amazing and smart and clever? No. This is supposed to be a big moment, and all I can think is, you are a moron. She's like, what other words do you know? I mean, they don't even know that one, dear. So the Spartan goes back to his ship and finds out that some people have turned up and just started stripping it for parts. I mean, they didn't even lock his door. How crap is your spaceship if you park it somewhere and people just immediately start stripping it with 0 defenses? But he pulls out his gun, he's like, I'm gonna get my shit back and then I'm gonna go home. And Kwan's like, well, if you leave now, you're not gonna get paid. It's like, you're not gonna get paid anyway, you don't have any money. Honestly, he should have turned her in for the bounty like he promised in the last episode. So he starts to leave to get his shit back, and she's like, it's my aunt. We need to go and see my aunt. Yes, there's always another side quest with this woman. I mean, she didn't even remember her aunt existed until this very moment. Although seeing how little she cared about her father that was dying underneath a car, I can believe it. The only reason she cares about her aunt is because she controls the family money, which is basically the only thing Kwan's interested in. All me, 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 me. And she's like, if you leave now, you go home with nothing. It's like, yeah, but he'll have his ship and he'll have lost you, which is worth its weight in gold. That is priceless. Then she has the nerve to say, what kind of pirate are you? And it's like, I wouldn't remind him of that. You've still got a bounty on your head, dear. At this point, I'd pay the guy to take her off me. So then we get another bath scene just so we can see someone else's saggy cheeks. Although they may have been in better shape than Master Chief's. And we also get an overhead angle. And I've not zoomed in, but I think we might be able to see his Master Dong as well. But essentially, this entire conversation is, I need Kwan killed because she might raise an army against me. So he asks this woman to handle it because she's a professional. But there is a spark of entertainment as Kwan enters that building and then just gets immediately yeeted out by a guy. He's clearly met her before. Well, this one holds a knife to the guy's throat. Very quickly regrets that, though, as the guy beats the crap out of him in one of the few action scenes in this TV show, which is inspired by a first-person shooter. And I think this few seconds of action means that he's had more action scenes than Master Chief has out of the last 3 episodes combined. And once again, another woman meets Kwan and is really happy to see her, which is the most unbelievable part of the show. And she's like, Auntie, I need your help. It's like, yeah, because you never met anyone that you didn't want something from. Kwan Ha, the leech. I forgot how many times this guy gets his arse out. This is like 3 or 4 times in the same episode at this point. He's just done it again. It's about 5 times. I've just eaten a vitamin tablet because I desperately needed some kind of mental stimulation to keep myself alive while going through this. That's the levels of desperation this show has reduced me to. So Kwan's walking with her aunt. They go in this room, and the 2 guys decide to stop him, and he's just beat the crap out of him like 30 seconds before. And he's like, are you sure want to go through all that embarrassment again? And I'm like, yeah, what on earth do you think you're doing? But he says, you go get the money, I'm going to see a man about a ship. Because for some reason, he didn't stop the people taking his away. Which I still don't know why he didn't stop him taking it, because he easily could have done. He was right there. So this woman's really pleased with herself because she's put a load of words into the machine of the alien language, even though, as I've already proved, most of them are wrong. Which means all of her translations will also be wrong. Or at least they should be, if the writers knew what they were doing. Or if she did, the woman in STEM. But she says, I can't believe we've not done this before. And the Spartan's like, with respect, man, this is the first you've ever spoken to us. So this woman is so smart, she's actually held back all of science out of jealousy. The writers wrote that and thought it was good. And she's like, yeah, it's because I always wondered why my mom spent more time with you than me. I always thought it was because you were more fun than me. I'm like, having a wart removed is probably more fun than you. Probably got more signs of intelligent life in it as well. But then they describe how they were all given pets, and then they were put through challenges, and whoever lost had to kill their own pet. And then the guy won all of them, and instead it just means he didn't have to kill his pet. Halsey killed it as well instead. The thing is, I think we can set this up for Kwan. Either way, she won't escape. It's a win-win all the way around. We can get that creepy scientist with the 500 clone Halseys in his basement to set it up. It'll be amazing. That can be the pilot TV episode of his new series. Here's Master Chief out on a balcony in an unknown area with unknown threats. No helmet on. Same expression. I actually think his helmet is capable of more expressions than he is. But finally, after spending the last half an hour being moody out on a balcony, he tells Halsey, actually, I had a memory of you. And she's like, well, duh, of course I was with you as a child. He's like, not at the orphanage, I mean here. And at this point, it should be really easy just to explain that away. Just be like, yeah, I'm around an orphanage, of course I was around kids. This was an experimental colony, and I just wanted to make sure that all of the kids at this colony were well looked after, trained, healthy, all that kind of stuff. Would have been a great story. But instead of coming up with a story, she just goes, you were probably wrong. This was meant to be one of the finest human minds. Can't even come up with a good excuse. So she's just like, I was around during this time of terrible grief, and you've probably just confused your memories. But he goes to meet the guy about the ship, and the guy's like, oh, bad news. Your ship's already been stripped for parts. It doesn't exist anymore. I'm like, what did you expect? You saw it being stripped for parts. And he's like, oh, I thought I'd just be able to buy it back. Like, what do you mean, buy it back? Why is a pirate buying his own ship back? He parked it, someone took it, and you want to buy it back? Shoot them all! It's what he was going to do anyway. I don't know why he's just immediately backed down and just wanted to buy a ship back that he already owned. But the guy's like, you'll just have to buy another ship, you know, because ships grow on trees. So you can probably buy one about 200 miles south. For the right price, I can take you there. And so instead, he steals the guy's bike, rather than going to the people who stripped his ship in the first place and taking a ship from them. And getting revenge and justice as he does it. I'm really glad that these people didn't write John Wick, because otherwise, his dog would have got killed, and instead of actually going to take revenge, he would have gone, oh well, I better go to the pound and get another one then. It makes this scene where he's like, I'm going to be a badass and threaten you over your bike with my gun, a little bit meaningless, when he's essentially just being a coward. You're a pathetic little beta who won't even go and do anything to the people that stripped your ship. Instead, you're threatening a guy on a bike. Oh, what a big hard man you are. And Kwan's already spending other people's money. Oh, we can easily start this with 50 fighters. Oh, we get all the money in the world. She's like, no, the money, firstly, the money's already gone. But I'd just be like, quite frankly, some child isn't going to be telling me how I should spend the family fortune. Cheers. And she's like, oh, they're scared and desperate, but we just need to remind them who they're fighting for. I was like, well, they're not fighting for you. Like, she's the only person that won't get handed in for money. It'll just be because of how insufferable she is. And she's like, no, I can pick up where my father left off. I can fight. It's like, you can't do anything. You couldn't even pull your dying father out from under a car. You ran off. No, you're like, no, I can lead a rebellion. You couldn't lead a piss up in a brewery. But in a show like this, made in the current year, we've got to drag out the usual tropes. Oh yes, you may have thought he was a good father. No, it turns out he's a terrible father. He's a terrible person, and he's a terrible man. Because all men are. All men are terrible, all mothers are amazing. Those are the rules, folks. Yes, apparently he was a tyrant who worked for some monks, and they had the secret of why his family was really on Madrigal. I don't know if you're getting it yet. They're probably protecting the temple. That'll be why that base was suspiciously close to the temple. And they're definitely setting her and her family up to be one of the people that can interact with the artifact. She is going to be the key to everything. And I called it a couple of weeks back. I still think at some point Master Chief is going to get in trouble. He needs to do something with the artifact to actually save everybody, and he won't be able to. But don't worry, because Kwan will be there, and she'll do it. And that'll be when she finds out she's a blessed one herself. This is week 4. I thought of it during episode 3. Let's see if it comes to pass. And then in the best part of the episode, the assassin turns up and is after Kwan. All we can do is live in hope that she actually succeeds. So she attacks her mother. Kwan turns and starts pulling on the iron grate in the window, as if she thinks it can lift up like a window. You can tell that that is a solid metal frame that goes from the bottom of the window to the top. It can't move, it's metal, dear! Thickest person in the universe. No one's gonna convince me otherwise. Although that woman in STEM is giving her a run for her money. But she says, hello Kwan, I'm cleaning up your father's mess as usual. And for some reason doesn't just kill Kwan, I don't know why. Instead we've got to have a big conversation. So she grabs Kwan's aunt, rather than Kwan for some reason, and just slits her throat. I'm like, great, now do it to Kwan! But unfortunately this guy turns up and starts shooting her just in time, and I'm like, oh, we were so close to victory. So after he fires, she jumps through the metal grate which is attached to the wall, and it just pops off! What on earth did you attach that to the wall with? But either way, she's falling, and she does this weird jumping back and forth onto different parts of the wall, as if to break her fall, and she does a superhero landing, and I'm like, I don't think that'd help you. As you're falling, you apply sideways momentum to yourself, but gravity's still pulling you down at the same speed, so you don't break your fall at all by bouncing back and forth. To break your fall, you'd have to somehow push up, and she wasn't. She was just going backwards and forwards while still falling. And he looks out the window and doesn't fire for some reason. I don't know why. But he reloads his revolver. How many hundreds of years into the future is this with space travel, and we're still using bullets and 6-shooter revolvers? But they go to the bike, and someone out of frame starts automatic firing a gun at them and manages to miss, even though they had no idea they were there. I don't even know how you missed that shot. Because he didn't miss with his revolver, but somehow that guy missed that easy shot at that range with an automatic weapon. Never fired a gun in my life. Don't think I'd miss that one. But basically an army turn up and have him completely surrounded. Not that that stops him though, because even though there's people all around him with guns shooting at him, he just rides off on his bike. No, there's a firing squad in a line. It can't hit him. So we get this bike scene going through the city. They managed to lose one of the riders because he can't make a 90-degree turn. No, seriously, he can't make a 90-degree turn. He doesn't brake and just slams into a wall. Welcome to Halo, where the average IQ is 60. And you're like, oh, there's still one on them. How will they cleverly get out of this with an impressive chase? No, he just turns around and shoots him. And then rides off. And that's it. That's the chase. It goes on for 2 scenes. And the way he escapes the entire people after him is he makes one right turn and then just shoots the other one. It lasts about 20 seconds. The show is so cheap. But the creepy scientist says Cortana's scanned Master Chief's brain, and essentially parts of his amygdala are opening up. Which basically means despite all of their best efforts to hide his memories, now they're coming back to him. It's emotions mixed with memory. You know, like everybody else in the entire universe. But Master Chief's gone away and he's had a little cry, and he's now realized that the second artifact is already on the planet and he knows where it is. And he says it as if he's just thought of it, when actually that was what all the hallucinations were about to begin with. It's very weird. He also puts his bicycle helmet back on, because he's getting in a car, and what happens if he crashes? Of course he needs his helmet on. Master Chief's helmet is only there to protect you when you're driving, and in case you need to see your own memories. That is what the episode teaches us. So they're translating the alien language, and for some reason they know the word for foundation. There's not a single circumstance on Earth I can imagine a soldier being able to work out that an alien has said foundation. Not unless he was getting to build him a new home or something, which seems rather unlikely for the Covenant. But then she's like, oh no, this phenome changes it, maybe it means keystone. They only pick up language from what they hear them saying as they're shooting them in the face, but somehow she knows the Covenant word for keystone. I don't know if you're getting the subtle messaging of this scene. Yes, for some reason the Type B in STEM is flirting with the Type B who has gun oil gunk in her hair. How could you possibly resist? But they keep going through this translation and somehow translate sacred ring? When did one of them say that? When you were shooting them in the face? And how did you know what it means? None of this makes any sense. And now she's translated it to Halo. Magically. Just like everything else in the show. We desperately need some kind of reference to the IP in the show, so we're just gonna pretend that the Whammon did it. And she's like, I know you report to Halsey, but can we keep this between us? I'm like, as far as you know, she's Spartan that has been raised to obey Halsey since birth, and you think that now she'll betray her? You have no reason to think that. But secondly, she will, because she clearly doesn't even want your uniforms between you. She's like, oh yeah, no problem. It's our secret, yes, because Spartans are well known for keeping secrets from their superiors. And she's like, the way I see it, we're sort of like sisters. Not unless you popped out the same womb. But then we get a big speech about how you're very odd. Halsey designs everything to her specifications. And when those things act weird, she gets very uncomfortable. And by weird, she means acts human. So she should be very uncomfortable with Master Chief and this new Spartan. I mean, the weirdest thing to me is that all it takes is for you not to have your thing in your back for about 30 seconds, and suddenly Halsey wants to wipe you out because you make her uncomfortable. It might be the worst developed emotional suppressing palette you could have invented. It wears off at incredible speed, except at this guy, who said it took him years, but everyone else it takes them about 30 seconds down the pub before they start writing symphonies and playing the harp. This is another long zoom in on Kwan's face for no reason, because she has absolutely no expression on it.
Oh, look how close we can get to her nose.
Master Chief has driven all this way with his protective bicycle helmet. He's got out of the car, and Master Chief and Halsey enter the cave that they found before. And they find the pillar that he touched as a kid, which presumably, if he touches it, won't do anything again because he's already touched it as a kid, so anything it's going to do to him, it will have already done. They act like this is a big deal, but surely anything that it could have possibly done, it's already done. And there's this big speech about how Halsey is just in search of human potential. And if she finds your glitch, then she will cut you out of her life in search of those answers. Yes, they are claiming that Halsey's sole purpose in life is to find the potential of all humans while simultaneously hating anyone that acts human. That's the plot! The key to finding human potential is to cut humanity out of all humans. Obviously, that makes sense. I do like the music during this scene, but it really is doing all of the work. She doesn't tolerate glitches. Except for the fact she's already defined glitches as being human. And discovering humanity is apparently now her mission. So, they could have just left her mission as protecting humanity, but no, apparently she's the first person to try and discover the limits of humanity while removing humanity from everything. You idiots! You absolute moronic idiot! This show is ridiculous. Nothing happened during this entire episode. It's probably some of the most boring TV I've ever seen in my life, and I don't even know how I got through this to record this episode to begin with. As I said, at one point, I even took vitamin pills, just because it was more entertaining than anything else that I could possibly do at this time. I basically just started eating random things that were on my desk. This episode was less offensively bad in, mistakes than the previous episodes, but it was so much more boring, even the second one. Nothing happened, every scene was dragged out, and it all seemed to be designed to be as low budget as possible. Kwan's entire storyline should be cut, as it should have done from the entire start of the series. It contributes nothing, she's incredibly annoying, she's the most horrible person in the show, and this includes Halsey, who'll quite willingly sacrifice children for her goals. And now we've got a second Spartan that's removed their emotional chip and decided to put gun gunk in their hair just so they can chat up a scientist. And that's a plot. The entire translation thing didn't make any sense if you thought about it for 5 seconds. And Master Chief seems to be doing everything except actually shooting anything in this show about a first-person shooter. All in all, this might well be one of the worst shows I've ever seen, and that includes Naomi. Because the worst thing that can happen with these is when nothing happens throughout the entire episode, and for this, it's every episode! It's absolutely crazy that anyone even signed this off as a TV show. Because we've had loads of bad television. We've had Wheel of Time, we're gonna have Rings of Power, but at least in those, I think something will actually happen. I think there'll actually be a TV show with a plot, and there just isn't in this. I wouldn't classify this as a TV show. I wouldn't classify this as even remotely approaching entertainment. And if I paid for this show to be made, I would immediately be demanding a refund because you weren't given whatever you asked for. But let me know your thoughts down in the comments below. Like the video if you like the video, subscribe, more videos like this in the future, and I will see you in the next one, whatever that ends up being. Bye-bye.